Adonai Elohim melech haolam, asher kitanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'asok b'divrei Torah. Thus for you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctifies us with his commandments, and commands us to engross ourselves in the words of Torah. Now, the name of this 42nd reading from the Torah is Matot, and it means tribes. The name is derived from the words of Hebrew, or Numbers 30:1, which says, "Then Moses spoke to the heads of the tribes of the sons of Israel." Numbers 30 discusses the laws of vows and oaths, and Numbers 31 tells of the story of Israel's war with Midian. And Numbers 32 relates the story of how the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh came to inherit the land east of the Jordan River. Except in biblical calendar years, Matot is read together with the subsequent Torah portion, Maseh, on the same Shabbat. So we have a double portion here this week. Now, the last reading from the book of Numbers is called Maseh, a word which means journeys, and it comes from the first verse of the reading and begins with the words, "These are the journeys of the sons of Israel." Numbers 33:1. Maseh is the end of the continuous narrative of Torah that begins in Genesis with the creation of the universe. The narrative does not resume again until the end of Deuteronomy, when Moses dies. Okay?
It's moving.
So we have just a continuous story right up until this time. And then we pick up and talk about other things in Deuteronomy, the second reading of the law. The final reading of Numbers sells several last-minute details. In it, we find a list of encampments from Egypt to the plains of Moab. We also find instructions for apportioning the land, as well as the specifics regarding the borders of the land. While explaining the land and its borders, Moses takes special care to introduce the laws of the cities of refuge and more inheritance laws. These special laws and provisions protect three people groups who are generally ignored, neglected, or abused. That's the priests. They were just generally ignored, and that's why you didn't see, back in those days, you didn't see wealthy rabbis, because a lot of people just didn't pay their tithes like they were supposed to, so the rabbis sometimes went hungry. And so then you have the accidental criminal. That's the person who commits manslaughter accidentally. You're working with your friend and you're chopping a tree down or something like that. You got the axe, and say either the axe head flies off and hits the other guy and kills him. Well, then that's manslaughter. It's not something that you intended, but his avenger, his blood avenger, that person that died, his family can come after you. That's why God said, okay, we're going to have these cities of refuge. And it's the study on the cities of refuge, and their meaning is just really a good study. And one of these days I'll dust off one of those old sermons that I've done on that, because it's a fascinating study. And then finally, the last one that we see are the women. A lot of times women are, they're ignored, neglected, and abused, or abused. The women sometimes get the short end of it back in those days, and even in today's world too. And so God made special provision for the women that they could also inherit, just like the men could. All right, and that was something that was groundbreaking for the Middle East. None of the other cultures would lift and put women on that kind of a pedestal that give them that special legal protection. Now, this morning we're going to be talking about oaths or vows. Now, a vow or an oath is an oral promise to which a person voluntarily obligates himself. Vows and oaths have not disappeared from the world. if a Roman Catholic enters the priesthood, he takes a certain vow. Okay, and nuns do that also. If a person becomes a monk or a nun, he takes the vows of that order. Now, when I joined the Coast Guard back at least 150 years ago, it was a long time ago. And all of you that have served in the military, you've taken this same oath. All right? And it's I, whatever your name is, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, so help me God. All right. Now, did you notice that there's not an expiration date on that? So all you guys that raised your right hand and said that, you're subject to recall anytime, or even not. You swore that you're going to defend the Constitution, not the president. Okay? I'm just throwing that in. That's not in my notes. But we swore to defend the Constitution, not a person or not a politician. That's why we still have the freedoms, fleeting as they are today. We still have some of those freedoms left to us because we swore to defend a document, and it's kind of like our that document is what defines us. It's like our Bible is what defines us as believers. As part of her graduation ceremony, and we got some others here too, that Cynthia and Elizabeth, David, all swore an oath. It's called the Hippocratic Oath. And it's to do no harm as a doctor. Nurses, I think, nurses also take the Hippocratic Oath. All right? So when a man or a woman gets married, they exchange vows. Now, vows are like extra solemn promises for which we expect God to hold us accountable. If a man makes a vow to the Lord or takes an oath to bind himself with a binding obligation, he should not violate his word. He shall do according to all that proceeds out of his mouth. So it says Numbers 30 and 2. Now, in Hebrew, a vow is nader. I don't know if you picked it up when I was chanting there with the word nader. And it's a type of oath by which a person binds himself or herself to perform a certain act or maybe refrain from a certain thing. A vow is understood as a promise, obligation, or prohibition that a person declares upon himself or herself. You can't make a vow for somebody else. Vows are they're personal. The Nazarite vow, number 6, and referred to again in Acts 18 and 21, are good examples of biblical vows. Now, they were not forever vows in most cases. Now, Samson was a Nazarite from birth. He was supposed to be a Nazarite from birth. But generally speaking, a Nazarite would take a vow, and it was a minimum of 30 days, but it had an expiration date. You didn't go beyond a year, generally speaking. And you would vow to do certain things or to refrain from certain things. Part of the Nazarite vow was that you would not drink any alcohol or have anything from the fruit of the vine. So, no PBJ sandwiches, okay? We mean no Welch's grape jelly on your sandwiches. Guess you can have a strawberry.
No tomatoes.
Huh?
No tomatoes.
And no tomatoes. That's right. No, nothing. That was a fruit of the vine. Okay? So, anyway, oaths are similar to vows. And, when a politician begins his term, he takes an oath of office. Now, let me ask you this morning, what does it mean when a politician takes an oath? Absolutely nothing. Since taking control of the House, Democrat leaders of several key committees have nixed the phrase, "So help me God," from a swearing-in oath for individuals testifying before them. A few years ago in the National Democrat Convention, they struck any mention of God from their platform. I think God belongs in religious institutions, in temple, in church, in cathedral, in mosque, but not in Congress. This is Democrat Representative Steve Cohen of Tennessee. Cohen. Can you imagine that? This guy is from the priestly line, and here he is saying God has no place in our government. Well, he's a little bit wrong. No, he's a lot wrong. He's the chairman of the Judiciary Committee subcommittee on the Constitution, civil rights, and civil liberties. And that's what he told somebody in the interview with the New York Times. Now, that's a problem with government today, and maybe it's always been. Politicians will say whatever it takes to get elected, and then they'll say whatever they have to do whatever they have to do to stay elected. They like that power. So let's not ever be like the politicians. I'm not telling you not to get into politics and try to do some good work, but those people are not to be copied and emulated. Before testifying in a court of law, witnesses are required to take an oath to tell the truth, sometimes by swearing on a Bible or other holy books. An oath, shavuah, it can be any statement, formal declaration, or promise that a person swears to uphold. Now, Jewish law also recognized the need for oaths when in front of a Beit Din. That's a rabbinic court. All right, but the procedure for swearing in witnesses was quite different. During the time of the Sanhedrin, the method deemed most effective was solemnly reminding the witness of the sin of lying, and particularly of bearing false witness. In criminal cases, witnesses were reminded that if their testimony was proved false, they would receive the same punishment that the defendant would have received on the basis of their testimony. Wow, that's sobering, isn't it? In contemporary Jewish courts, witnesses are not sworn in, but are obligated by Jewish law to tell the truth. But can you imagine? In Jewish law, it takes two people as a witness for a murder conviction. And if you got two guys that come together and they say, well, we're gonna get on so and so there because we don't like him and we want to take over his part of the business, we'll say that we're going to kill somebody, and then we'll say that he did it, the two of us. Well, if they are discovered, if they're found out that they lied, if they perjured themselves, then they would be put to death under Jewish law. But that's what the Bible says. If you perjure yourself, you get the penalty that you would have caused on the defendant. In Bible times, oaths were taken in the name of the gods, names of the little g gods. Okay, remember we talked about every country, every people group, every area had their own set of little g gods, and so they would take oaths in the name of their God. And so and basically the idea of it was that, okay, this God, whoever it may be, may he do to me whatever he wants if I don't follow through with my oath. And so the Bible also warns us not to take oaths in the names of other gods. Well, of course we would, because they're false gods to begin with. They're not even gods, So, I swear on the Mickey Mantle signed baseball. Well, that's not, I mean, what silliness that you would have swearing on that. And that's what people. What's the difference between my Mickey Mantle endorsed baseball or some rock that somebody picked up and said, "Ooh, that's a nice looking rock," and you can tell in today's world we're walking around and my granddaughter Zion is out. She, whenever I go walking with her, I have to make sure that whatever it is that I'm wearing has lots of pockets and good suspenders. Because why? Because I'm going to come back with a pocket loads of rocks. Oh, that's a pretty one, Grandpa. Let's pick up this one. You know, and well, what's pretty about that? Oh, this looks like a latte. Latte? Seriously? Okay, well, anyway, those rocks go back to the house. And so they, I don't know how I got in on the rocks, but anyway, that's swearing on a rock of some sort. There you go. All right, now, in Exodus 23:13, with all the things that I've said to you, take heed, make no mention of the names of other gods, and do not let them be heard in your mouth. So I don't know how we get around that when we're telling the history of the Bible, because the Bible clearly writes those names of those false gods, and we tell those stories. But what I think it means is that you don't put the name of those gods in your mouth when you're swearing an oath. Okay, we can tell the story of the various Molech and Baal and those kind of things, because we're not swearing by them. We're telling a story and making a warning against those kind of things. Now, instead, if one must take a vow or an oath, he should fear only the Lord and swear by His name. So if you really have to take an oath, you better do it by only the Lord. And so in Deuteronomy 6:13 it says, you must fear Adonai your God and serve Him and swear by His name. But a person in the days of the Bible wanted to make a vow or an oath, he would say something like this: may the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if I do not do such and such, whatever it is that he's vowing. Or he might say, as the Lord lives, I will do this, whatever it is. And so there is, that's the way that you would make a vow back in the Bible days. It said, you shall not be double-minded or double-tongued, for to be double-tongued is a snare of death. Your speech shall not be false or empty or fulfilled by deed. Now that comes from the Didache. Now what is the Didache? Am I bringing in some extra biblical things here? The Didache was a book that was written by the disciples. It was instructions for the new Gentile believers. Okay, so once they, it was kind of like their instruction manual for new believers. That's what the Didache was. And in fact, if you've been here long enough, you remember I taught a course on the Didache, and we almost finished up with that course before the COVID foolishness kind of shut us down. And so maybe one of these days we'll go back to it, because what the Didache was, it just took scriptures and put them together with a little explanation. So it was a commentary on the words that Yeshua had already said. And so it's nothing new. There's nothing new in there. And so don't get alarmed that I used something in my sermon that was not in the Bible, okay? And that's what it was. It's called the Didache. And however, when taking an oath or a vow in the name of God, that's a risky enterprise. It really is. The Lord wants us not to swear by my name falsely or so profane the name of your God. That's in Leviticus 19:12. This is part of the meaning of the commandment, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. You know, that's when someone goes out and they'll say what we consider a swear word. You know, they'll say whatever, and they'll have God's name in that. Well, is that swearing? Yeah, that is. It's not something that you should do. But what God is saying when you take His name in vain is you're taking a vow and then you don't do it. Or you say, I'm a believer in Yeshua, or I'm a believer in the one God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and then you live in a manner that you're not living up to what Torah says for you to do. Now that's taking God's name in vain, actually, because you're going against His character. His name, there are names for His character. And so when we're going against what God, His character, His name, that's how we are then going against and taking His name in vain. And so it says He will not leave that person unpunished. That's why Yeshua warned His disciples against needlessly taking oaths in Matthew 5:33-37. Again, you have heard that it was said to those of old. Okay, now here's a note for you. Whenever Yeshua says, now you have heard it said, what he's doing is going back to something that says, okay, listen guys, I know this is what you heard, this is what you've been taught, but stand by, because here's what I'm telling you the real story is. You've heard it said of those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall carry out your oaths to Adonai. That right there, that's true, that's right out of the Bible. But I'll tell you, don't swear at all. Not by heaven, for it is the throne of God, nor by earth, for it is the footstool of His feet, nor by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make a single hair white or black. That's before Miss Clairol. But let your word yes be yes, and your no, no. Anything more than this is from the evil one. Now, if a person does take a vow or oath, he should make every possible effort to keep his word. Not only that, a person should treat everything that comes out of his mouth as if it were a solemn vow. How about that? Anything that you say should be your word. The Torah says in Numbers 32, we've read it already twice, whenever a man makes a vow to Adonai, swears an oath to obligate himself by a pledge, he is not to violate his word, but to do everything coming out of his mouth. This requires being very careful about everything that we say, not just vows and oaths. Those idle words that people will sometimes come up with, that you have to be careful what you're saying, that you're not saying something very braggadocious, or you try to be cool or this and that and the other, and saying some foolish stuff that will come back and bite you someday. Our word is very important. It defines us. It defines who we are. If we do what we say we will do, and then we will be known by everyone around us as a person who is worthy of trust. Now, I'm sure that we've all worked around people who say one thing and do another. That person, you can't trust them. If they say, "Oh yeah, I'll do that," and you don't, do they really mean that? Or are they going to do that? And sometimes it only takes one time of falsifying a record or lying to a coworker and not following through on a promise to permanently destroy everyone's trust in you. Just one time is all it takes. And once you've lost your integrity, where do you go to get it back? I can't say that often enough. If I said it every week, think about that. Once you've lost your integrity, where do you go to get it back? It's a long crawl to get it back, because people are not going to trust it. They're going to have to see that, he made a mistake at one point, but, I'm going to not trust and I'm going to verify everything that this dude says, because he lied to me once. We don't ever want to be known as a liar. Vows and oaths are sometimes are something that we should take extremely seriously. Now, back in the day, a man's word was his bond. You've heard that say. A handshake would often seal a deal worth millions. In today's world, you don't buy a pair of socks without some kind of a legal obligation there. That's the fine writing, the fine print. Even many marriages are not consummated without a prenuptial agreement outlining the obligations of each party and the legal penalties incurred upon broaching of the marriage vows. Now, I don't know if any of y'all were wealthy enough to have a prenup when you got married. You know, if you were like us, neither one of us had anything, and so yeah, you can have whatever nothing I got. You know, that sort of thing. But you'll see these kind of arrangements among the very wealthy people and the rich and famous of Hollywood. You know, that kind of people. There was one that I can remember is Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones. You know, okay, that. So that was one gal that that was a kind of a heartthrob. Everything every time I saw her in Zorro, and so forth. I thought that boy, that's a nice looking woman. Well, Michael Douglas married her, and he's a lot older than she is, and also he had a reputation. Well, they had a prenup, all right, and in that prenup it said if he ever wandered, then he was ruined financially. She got it all, and so he has been a good boy ever since then. You know, money talks. So they have these vows, these those kinds of things that go on today, and I don't know. That's I'm just trying to think of other little deeds, but we just got to be very, very careful about what it is, what we do, what we say, and But now let's go back to those marriage vows. We were talking about Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones. Well, too often people go into the idea that they go into marriage with the idea that if it doesn't work out, then no foul, no harm, and we'll just go our separate ways, and they call it quits. Now, this morning, I'm not going to call out anyone who's been divorced and then, condemn them for ending a marriage. What's in the past stays in the past. So that's over. I think we can all agree that ideally, God wants us to engage in marriage as a lifelong obligation. Now, when we got married, almost 50 years ago, we kind of kidded around a little bit and said, well, we're getting this marriage vow thing here, it's got to have a time limit on it because, neither one of us want to be in this for life. So we said, all right, if after 59 years and 3 months of being married, this doesn't work out, then we'll just call it quits. And so Pat told my mother, said, oh yeah, well, we got a modern deal here with our marriage, and it's got a time limit on it. Of course, that just gave my old mother just about a heart attack. She said, yeah, we decided that after a certain period of time that if we're not happy with each other, then we just call it quits. It'll be done. We'll just be done. And my mother's not knowing what to say. And that was truly something to see when my mother didn't know what to say. And so then Pat sprung it on her and said, yeah, after 59 years and 3 months, we're going to call it quits if we're not happy. And so that was worth it just to see my mother speechless. I'll tell you what. So in Jewish tradition, we have a ketubah. It's a contract-style document signed by a man and two significant male witnesses, which guarantees the woman will be provided food, housing, and other provisions, as well as ensuring her protection upon death or divorce. In a more contemporary ketubah, you got all sorts of little romantic flourishes in it. Oh my goodness, they just write all sorts of sweet little mushy stuff. Or the couple may choose to write their own vows and then sign it together in front of the wedding party. And I've done weddings where they get up there and they'll sign it in front of everybody, and we all shout mazel and stuff. And it's great. The ketubah is meant to be a piece of art, the modern one, that's properly displayed in your home. You got it. That's the one that you sit someplace there, and if the marriage is not going someplace when the ketubah comes down and they put up a picture of Lassie. You know, it's oh boy, it's just gone to the dog. And so, but displaying that ketubah is a reminder, a constant reminder of the vow that you took to each other, that you took before God. And so I think it's a nice touch that that's something that the Christian world ought to pick up from the Jewish world, is the idea of a ketubah, displaying your vows to each other. Now, marriage is not for sissies. Now, I tell you, a successful marriage requires unending love for each other. It also requires patience, wisdom, understanding, patience, kindness, a forgiving spirit, patience, and self-sacrifice. Patience. Did I mention patience in there? Okay. A successful marriage ultimately demands that each spouse be willing to give up their position on something in order to bring about peace in the household. Okay, this idea of, oh, well, we have to meet halfway, to make it right. No. Sometimes you have to meet all the way over into her corner. Or she has to go into your corner, And so, whatever it might mean, whatever it is. Sometimes you have to go that extra mile and why would you do that? Because of the example that Yeshua gave to us. That's one of the reasons that Paul says that we must be like Messiah in our marriage, willing to lay down our lives for our wives if need be. How many of you men would be willing to save your wife from mortal danger if it meant without a doubt, that you would die trying to save her? If you can't raise your hand there, gentlemen, then you need to work on that marriage. Because we should, all of us, be willing to lay down our lives for our spouse. And without even a second thought. You love her that much? You should. Because that's how much Yeshua loved us. He loved us enough that he gave his life for us. As mentioned above, Yeshua had his own ideas about making vows. His take on it was, don't make vows. Live your life in such a manner that everyone knows that if you say something, they can take it to the bank. That's how we should live our lives. You don't need to make a vow because your word is your vow. They know that. Your integrity, your honesty, your loyalty all paint a picture of you and who you are, and more importantly, whose you are. Let me say that again. It paints a picture. Your integrity, your honesty, your loyalty paints a picture of who you are, but also of whose you are. Do you belong to Yeshua? Are you a child of God? If you are, then that your word, your honesty, that should be a direct reflection of what we see in Yeshua. You can't be a true follower of the Messiah and live your life falsely. Let every word that comes out of your mouth be true, kind, gracious, and uplifting. Let your reputation be such that you don't have to swear for people to believe you. You don't have to go up there and say, well, I swear, let me tell you the truth. Well, don't tell them the truth. I had a friend of mine, he was a roommate in college, and then later on we worked together. But one of the things that he would say, just to say, well, to tell you the truth, and we've all heard people say that, something like that. Well, to tell you the truth, what does that mean then? That you don't normally tell me the truth? But it's kind of a comical saying that we do, but it is one of those kind of things where you're swearing. But let your life, let your conversation, everything that is about you, be that one that you don't have to swear it because they know if you said it, it's going to be true and it's going to take precedence. So let your reputation be such that you don't have to swear so that people will believe you. If you say it, then they know it is true. That's the way to be a true disciple of Yeshua, is by the integrity and honesty of our conversation.